Hi everybody, welcome to New Directions East Asia 2021. My name is William Bayliss and I'll be moderating this session. This session is entitled Hybridization of Assessment Strategies in English Language Classes in Higher Education in Bangladesh. Insights from practitioners' experience during COVID-19 pandemic. And the presenter is Tanya Rahman. Tanya is Senior Lecturer at the Department of English and Modern Languages of North South University in Dhaka. She received her MA in Applied Linguistics from the National Institute of Education of Nanyang Technological University in Singapore in 2010. If you have any questions for the presenter, please type them into the chat box during the session. We will have 10 minutes at the end where the questions will be addressed. I will now hand over to Tanya. Tanya, please start sharing your screen and begin when you're ready.
Okay, thank you so much, William. I'll be sharing my screen. Please let me know if you can see the screen is visible or not.
I can see the screen and I can hear and see you clearly.
Okay, thank you. Great. Okay, so hello everyone, and thank you British Council and New Directions for having me at this prestigious conference. I'm really honored and I feel really lucky to present at this prestigious conference. So as William has spoken about the title of my presentation, I'll be talking about hybridization of assessment strategies in Bangladeshi English language classes, especially in the higher education sector. And I will be focusing on the teachers' perspectives at a private university. So from my perspective is from the private sector. I will be talking about these in a moment. So I'll just give you some idea about what I'm going to cover in this presentation. So beginning with some ideas about what theory I think, what model I think is really applies to the situation I'm describing. I depended on learning in crisis and adaptability in education concepts. Then I'll be showing something about English language assessment in higher education in Bangladesh and the impact of COVID-19 on Bangladeshi higher education, especially in assessment in the higher education sector. What key changes came out because of the pandemic crisis. Then I'll be showing you the responses that I received from the teachers in a case study and what responses regarding the regarding the assessment strategies, the teachers' beliefs, existing beliefs, practices, and how they managed to bring some changes to their existing beliefs and practices to make things work during the pandemic. In the end, I'm going to share some lessons that we could learn from this experience. So starting with the concept of learning in crisis, since the COVID-19, like any other part of the world, Bangladesh has been affected very severely by this crisis. So and still it's still persisting, and the impact is going on. But still we are thinking about what we learned at the beginning of the crisis when it started, and while the education sector was going through a staggering situation, how the private sector managed to survive this crisis. So in order to look at that, I depended on this theory of learning in crisis. So the concepts in this theory that I thought is applicable in the situation I'm describing is the emergent relationship between learning and crisis. Because this theory talks about that when an unexpected situation happens in any field or area of life, including education, there is a mutual impact, and this mutual impact happens in terms of the crisis taking place, adapting with the crisis, learning about the crisis, and also how the unexpected situation impacts the learning itself. This theory tries to keep a balance between the emergence of the unexpected situation and the emergency quality of the situation. So how the learning practices in the face of unpredictable emergency situations arise, and how learning goes on as a dynamic process. So that's something I tried to relate with the situation that we went through. And with this learning in crisis, adaptivity or adaptability in education is another concept that I thought about. And when we think about adaptation, for example, the things that come to our mind, if we look at just a simple description, simple definition by Oxford Learner's Dictionary, it's an action or process of change, a process of changing something that or something being changed to adjust to a new situation or purpose. So when we look at the concepts adaptivity and adaptability, we think about not only the willingness to change, but also the ability to change. So these concepts of willingness and capacity, these are important concepts to keep in mind when we think about adapting to a crisis like the COVID-19. When we think about adaptivity or adaptability in education and learning in crisis, we think about the stakeholders' willingness and capacity to adjust to any new situation. So in this case, as one of the very crucial stakeholders, the teachers' ability and willingness to change is very crucial, because if we think about the concept of adaptive expertise, it tells us about the capacity and willingness to navigate swiftly and smoothly through any challenging or unique situation posed by any sudden occurrence or incidents, and act according to the new situation. So when we are thinking about the assessment, changes in the assessment systems, the things that happened in Bangladesh so far in the higher education sector. So the higher education has seen a development of assessment strategies from the summative to the formative in the recent years, and very recently there is an attempt of bringing about the change of blended or hybrid assessments at the wake of the COVID-19. So this is a very sudden kind of a very unexpected and new kind of an approach that Bangladesh is experiencing. And this happened during the COVID-19. So from the summative and formative assessment, now Bangladesh is trying to see if blended or hybrid systems can work in the assessment of higher education in Bangladesh. So moving on, if we look at the higher education structure in Bangladesh, the top level decision-making body is the Ministry of Education that decides for any higher education policies, under which the University Grants Commission works, and this is in direct relation with all the universities in Bangladesh, be private or public. The public universities are the government-owned universities, and there are 49 public universities and 103 private universities in Bangladesh currently. So these work under the ruling or under the guidelines of the University Grants Commission. So The key changes in higher education assessment during the COVID-19 that we could notice included macro level changes. So there have been changes that brought about by the University Grants Commission all over the country. So at first, beginning with the nationwide institutional closures on 26 March of 2020, online classes began at some very few private universities to continue their academic activities. So all the public universities, including the private universities, had been shut down on 26 March, but on the request of the private universities to carry on their activities, the universities started conducting online classes later on. So during the first semester of the pandemic, the University Grants Commission decided and ruled orders, ordered the universities not to take exams, sit-down exams, and asked the universities to replace the sit-down exams with short-timed in-class or take-home quizzes and assignments. There were also, while there were changes according to the COVID-19 situation in Bangladesh. So when the mortality rates reduced a little bit, then the university relaxed the ruling that the university should not take any exams. So at that moment, the private universities were allowed to take sit-down tests, but with some restrictions. And this happened during the midterm of the first semester during the pandemic. Now, for English language assessment in higher education in Bangladesh, earlier on, before the pandemic, this was the structure like the public universities followed. Written tests and viva tests only for very small portion, and the majority of the assessment focused on the written tests. Whereas the private universities, they conducted formative assessments, including written sit-down tests, assessments, short quizzes, vivas, presentations, and so on. For the other institutions, the assessments were written only. For the pandemic, during the pandemic, the midterm and final term assessments in the higher education classes for English language, teaching English language, public universities started to use assignments and timed quizzes when the online classes started in the public universities later on. In the private universities, however, the previous format of formative assessment continued with some relaxations and some additions like addition of viva in the written courses and long assignments and timed assignments timed short quizzes had been introduced in these institutions. So for recently, the recent development in higher education in Bangladesh has been that there has been a template for the OBE outcome-based education curriculum introduced by the University Grants Commission in 2019, and the Bangladesh National Qualification Framework had been announced in 2020. So in the template for OBE curriculum, a structure for summative assessment, near summative assessment has been proposed, in which sit-down tests, assignments, quizzes, and other activities have been included for assessment purpose. Now, in this study that I conducted to look at what the teachers' perspectives are on this, on the change scenario of the pandemic and what they experienced and how their perceptions about assessment changed, I interviewed 12 in-service teachers, both novice and experienced, who were teaching English as English for academic purposes, writing courses at the private university. All the teachers were master degree holders, and only one was a doctoral, excuse me, had a doctoral degree. Their age ranged between 32 to 50 years, and they had at least 3 to 17 years of teaching experience. So among the participants, 11 were female and 1 was a male teacher. Due to their schedules, I could not match with some of the, I wanted to interview more male teachers, but I could not get the schedules of the male teachers. So unfortunately, because of that, my participants turned out to be mostly female. For the interviews, I took the interviews for 45 to 60 minutes long, and for the analysis, I followed the inductive qualitative content analysis of Donny. So the major themes that I identified from the data were the teachers' existing beliefs and practices regarding the assessment in English language classes, changes in their beliefs and practices, their frustrations on online assessment, and also what strategies they took to solve the problems. Before I start showing their responses, this is one important point to note, because the institutional strategies of the university had to be changed because of the top level orders by the University Grants Commission. So following the University Grants Commission's directions, the university followed these changes, and the university brought these changes in the assessment strategy, in its overall assessment strategy. So there are different skills have been testing of different skills have been combined in courses, in all the courses. So for example, in EAP writing courses, earlier on the Viva was not included, but this time the Viva was included to assess the students besides the other components, assessment components. The workload for students have been relaxed, and the deadlines have been extended for final submissions. So as for the teachers' responses, the first theme that I had in mind was the first theme that emerged from the data was that what the teachers believed and what they practiced before the pandemic. Their beliefs regarded mainly real-time, mainly a preference for real-time and time-bound assessment. And this is because some of the teachers reported that this is not just they believe, their personal beliefs, this is also influenced by the students' preferences, because students prefer time-bound assessments. And their parents also. So there's a cultural, there is a learning culture that made the teachers and also the policymakers to think of written tests, to take written tests as the best tests to assess the students. For plagiarism and creativity and originality, however, the teachers also believed that more than assignments, the real-time tests or the written tests are the best ways to assess the students' creativity and originality, and also to check plagiarism. To look at the changes in the teachers' beliefs and practices when this COVID-19 took place, in the wake of the online teaching, at the beginning, the teachers were facing problems. There were problems regarding training, lack of technological support, network connectivity. A lot of issues were there. But when it went on, the online system, the online assessment and classes went on for 3 semesters. After that, the teachers got used to the system, and now they have the opinion that hybrid system, like using assignments on online assignments or online quizzes, timed online quizzes, are good ways to assess students. So I was talking about frustrations. They also shared their frustrations about having low energy, motivation, and stress like any other teacher in any other part of the world. So, and they also talked about time consuming, the preparation time, and also they talked about trust between the teacher and the student. So a gap of trust, a lack of trust, they noticed a lack of trust between the teacher and the student, and they had to give it a benefit of doubt during the assessments and so on. Another problem they reported was the difficulty in checking scripts online. So far they have been used to checking scripts, paper-based scripts. So shifting to the online script checking was very troublesome for them. So how to deal with these problems? Teachers reported because plagiarism was a big issue for these teachers. They reported like using Turnitin and Grammarly as some useful resources to check plagiarism in student performances during the assessments. So what lessons could be learned from this experience? So we could learn about flexibility, faculty flexibility regarding dealing with students during assessment, because earlier on the system in Bangladesh, the assessment system in Bangladesh, the online system has been completely new, and it was a shocking experience. But however, the teachers did go through the shock, and they did adapt to the challenges. And to tackle the challenges, the first thing they noticed is that the flexibility in the mindset, and also their tackling with the issue of trust was one strategy they had to take to tackle with the problem. More collaboration and cooperation have been reported as important between the teachers and the students. So students and teachers, both students and teachers, need to cooperate with each other and build the trust between both parties. And lastly, there are new opportunities because we are entering into the world of hybrid learning. So Bangladeshi teachers in this private education sector do see it as a new opportunity for assessment of English language classes in future. So this is all from my part. These are some of the references that I used in my presentation. So thank you so much. Any questions?
Hi, Tanya. Thank you very much for that really insightful presentation. I have a couple of questions for you, actually. So my question is this: if the pandemic was to magically disappear tomorrow, so there was no COVID worldwide, what changes do you think would stay, and what changes do you think would revert back to how they were before?
If that happens, what comes to my mind is some of the tests are going to be paper-based again, but not so much, because teachers have learned about the benefits of the digital quizzes, using the Google form, using a Google document, and using student collaboration in Google document, assignments, digital assignments, storyboarding, digital story making. So these kinds of benefits, I think teachers are going to keep in their practices. They are going to keep in the practices in near future.
Are there any that you think would be rejected? Are there any changes that you think people would prefer to go back?
For the changes, for example, during the pandemic, for the sit-down tests, what we had to do was that students were submitting their written timed test papers in terms of images and turning the images into PDF, so uploading the pictures of their written documents. I think that's something teachers don't want to do in future. They want the students to take the test in front of them. So instead of sending the pictures of their scripts from their home, this is not something that they like.
Thank you. In a presentation earlier today, a speaker pointed out that students not having access to strong internet bandwidth was an issue for remote delivery. Is this something that was raised in the research that you did?
Yes, during when the teachers were talking about their frustrations, this was one of the frustrations. And they did talk about network issues, but that's from the students' parts, because during the assessments, the students often complain about their network connectivity issues, and they can't submit their papers on time due to the network issues. So due to this problem, this is also another reason for which the teachers don't want the picture submission mode. They would like other modes preferably.
Are there any areas that you can think of for further research?
Yes, definitely, because this is a perspective I'm presenting from the private education sector. So the students and the teachers in this sector, they're more or less privileged in terms of technological support, in terms of network connectivity, any kind of, and also their financial conditions. So there is a lot of scope for studies like this in the public sector. So in the public sector, we don't really know what happened with the students and the teachers. So there is a very good scope for study in that sector, in Bangladesh especially.
What would you speculate the results of that comparison would be? What do you think would be different?
I think there would be a very marked difference, because the students in public universities in Bangladesh, they come from a very low socioeconomic background. So they face a lot of situations like they can't attend the classes, they can't afford to download the materials, and also the teachers themselves, they also need training to conduct such classes. So a lot of things need to be done in the public education sector. And what the public education sector can do from the study that I had done. So this is just a beginning, a small beginning. So more studies on the private university sector would give insights to the government. They would learn about how to, mobilize the higher education in the public sector, and facilitate by giving facilities, loans, in terms of digital resources to the students, to the teachers. So the public sector can actually benefit from such kind of studies. Yes.
Yeah, an interesting policy that the speaker earlier told me about was that the university actually encouraged the students to stay at the university and do the courses online while they were staying in their dorms, because the dorms had really strong Wi-Fi rather than the very weak Wi-Fi where the people were living at home.
No, the university did not ask the students to stay on campus. The students were off campus. The students were there at their homes, and they were doing classes from home. They were doing online classes from their home. So the students were not required to come to the campus. So the teachers and the students both were staying at home, and they were, conducting the classes. But what I said is that the teachers, the students, they were privileged in terms of, continuing their education in this sector. Many students dropped out in the public sector because of the pandemic, because of the closures. But this university, in the private sector, most universities in the private sector, they continued their activities because the students could pay the tuition fees, the students could continue their activities, even staying at home. So there were a lot of privileges that the private sector was enjoying actually. But having said that, even so, the private sector also suffered because there were a lot of private universities where a lot of teachers lost jobs, a lot of students had to drop out. So it's not that all the private universities in Bangladesh were succeeding like this case study.
Thank you very much, Tanya. That brings us to the end of the session. To those watching, please leave us some feedback on this session by answering the 2 short survey questions next to the screen. Thank you very much for attending, and I hope you continue to enjoy the rest of the conference. Thanks very much again, Tanya.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.